So the social worker told you that you could not see or speak to your son. And from what your son has told you, what were they telling him at that time?
That I didn't want him and that he belonged to the province now.
So your son spent the night at a home, a juvenile detention.
Similar, yeah, a juvenile home.
Okay. And you were told you would not be able to see or speak to him the next day after he arrived there?
Yes, I wasn't allowed to see or speak to him until the social worker told me I could.
Which was when?
She could meet with me for 9 days.
Were you given notice that he had been taken into the care of...
No. I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea what was going on at that point. I just figured they probably, because I'd called the police, that he had this very risky behavior, and I'd briefed them a bit at the facility he was staying at, that his risky behaviors and that, and that I, had made arrangements for him to go to a school where these would be addressed and he'd get the help he needed. But other than that, she just said she was investigating and she wouldn't reveal why. And when I asked her why it would be so long before I could meet with her, she said she had meetings and was busy.
How long did he end up in this home?
Just over 3 weeks.
And during his time there, was he treated appropriately? Did he try to contact you?
Yes, he ran away and from school one day and ran home and totally distraught, sobbing, begging me to hide him, to take him away. He didn't want to go back. And I told him, I said, we have to do this the right way. I have to call the police and tell them you're here, and you're going to go back, and we're going to do this the right way. And next thing I knew, the social worker was on my doorstep, and she took him.
And so she took him back?
To the facility, yes.
And was he allowed to, were you allowed to see him there? Excuse me.
I was allowed to see him after I met with the social worker on June 6th. She did say that I could have supervised visits, so I had to be supervised at all times. But she wouldn't tell me what any of the allegations were. I asked on numerous occasions what her grounds were for holding my child, what her authority was, and she insisted she didn't have to tell me. I just go to court and deal with it.
So considering that, so after the 3 weeks, was he returned to your care?
Eventually, yes. And it happened by going through supervisor. We did end up going to court. I hired a lawyer. We did go to court. It was adjourned. I had spoke to the social worker supervisor and had taken the copious amounts of paper I have, mental health issues that my son has had. I have every piece of paper from the time he turned 5. And I said, if you just look at this and see what I've struggled with over the years, you'll see why I did what I did. And she put her hand up in my face and said, I'm not interested in anything you have to say. So and I was with an advocate at the time.
Do you feel that social services dealt with you fairly and honestly?
If fair is not looking at, what I had, then I guess they did. But I wasn't allowed to present anything on my son. They knew virtually nothing about him.
What are some main points that you think are important to share about the way that the Ministry of Children and Families conducts business? Or from your experience, your personal experience, or from your experience as an officer?
Well, I know that when you're going into a court action, in the type of work I do, we advise people that anything they say can be used against them. And it's really important for people to realize that you do have a right to have an attorney, and you do have a right to be advised that any words that you do say could possibly be used against you. I also find that it's difficult for me to accept the process in that somebody sits and takes notes on a conversation, and yet you're not allowed to look at the notes to ensure accuracy, that something wasn't taken maybe out of context or missed in the discussion between the social worker and the parent that they're dealing with. Where I know in the type of work I do, we do narrative statements, and at the end of the statement we allow the person, because this could be used against them in court, we allow them the opportunity to read it over and add, delete, or change anything that's inaccurate. And they are allowed to sign it. I think that would be a great policy for the ministry, because there'd be no dispute as to what was said in the room, no misunderstanding. If you read your statement and you say it's okay, then that is an acceptable document for court. But if you read the statement and you say, oh, no, you got that person mixed up here, or this is out of context here, you should have the opportunity to clarify these things. And I think, too, that when you feel you've been dealt with unfairly, or you have an issue to complain about or bring forward, I don't think that it's very efficient that you complain to the agency that you're complaining about and expect them to investigate themselves. There has to be some type of a external review or public complaints type commission where people feel that they won't be targeted, that they will be protected if they speak out. I think on the whole, Child and Family Services are there for the protection of children, but I do think that there needs to be revisions in the way some things are done for the fairness of everybody.
Speaking about the complaints process, I already know from speaking with you yesterday that you are aware that there is an independent review is possible through the Ombudsman. What was your experience with that?
I've just started that, actually, because they wouldn't become involved while I hadn't a lawyer involved, and a lawyer isn't involved at the present time. It's not going to change my situation, but I think that if enough people who have had an adverse experience or feel that something hasn't been done according to the policy that the ministry sets out, that they should go to the Ombudsman, and the more people that do, I think will bring this to light, that there does have to be a look at the policy, and policy should be in place for everybody, not just some. And my experience with the Ombudsman to date has been good. They asked a lot of questions, spent a lot of time with me, and I'm hopeful that they will look further into this. It's not going to help my situation, but it certainly could maybe prevent another situation like this.
Can you share any stories about the ministry from your days as a police officer that brought concerns to you?
I guess being a police officer, I've seen a lot of different situations that I've particularly been frustrated with. One community I worked in, I'll bet every second weekend we were attending a residence and taking 2 small children out, and the children were always returned within a day or two. And I remember thinking, like, when is somebody going to do something? Because it was really horrific conditions these poor kids lived in. It certainly wasn't suitable to children. I had another one where we continually took this child and actually found her in a deep freeze that was propped open, and it had come to our attention because there was a brawl going on and people were being injured, and nobody knew where the child was, and we looked around and she was sleeping in the bottom of a freezer that was stuck open with a piece of wood, and that child was returned within a few days too. And that's part of my frustration, is I wonder why a lot of people might not agree with my philosophy on parenting, but I've never done anything illegal, neglectful, or abusive. I'm very strict, and I make no apologies for that. I want my child to grow up to be accountable, and he will.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I hope that somebody listens and we look at the policy that's in not just one province, but all provinces.
How do you think this experience has affected your son?
Well, he's very distrustful of social workers because he felt he was told that I had abandoned him. And actually, it's funny, the other night he made me shake his hand and say, unless you tell me from your own mouth that you're done with me, I don't believe anything anybody says. And I said, that's absolutely right, because if I'm done with you, you'll hear it from your mother.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah, but we shook hands on it, and that's the deal. I told him it'll come from my mouth, nobody else's.
So you believe that his ability to trust may be marred?
Absolutely.